Good afternoon. I am Senate Republican Leader Rob Ort. I'm joined by my friend and colleague here in state government, Assembly Republican Leader Will Barkley, as well as several members of the New York State Senate Republican Conference and the New York State Assembly Republican Conference, notably Senator Steve Chan, who we will hear from momentarily, and Assemblyman Lester Chang. We're here to talk, I think you'll hear from the Assemblyman and the Senator, on a specific incident that occurred in their districts. But I think I wanted to speak more broadly because I think that district is or that incident is really one of only several incidents that has occurred. And it's happening against the backdrop of a late budget. And one of the reasons the budget, if you believe my colleagues across the aisle, is late, is that they object with several of the governor's policy proposals, Article 7 language, one of which regards involuntary commitment, and specifically people who are not of sound mind because they suffer from severe mental incapacities to make decisions, even basic decisions around clothing, shelter, food. And of course, what happens, these folks are on the street, homeless. We see it all over New York City. We see it in other parts of the state. And I want to just start, before I highlight the incidents, I want to start by saying my first 4 years in this chamber, I was the chair of the Mental Health and Developmental Disabilities Committee in the Senate. And that's a position that I take a great deal of honor that I had the pleasure and the privilege to serve in that role. And I learned a great deal about both those two committees, the community, the developmental disability community and the mental health community. And I want to say that I am not here, nor should anyone take it, that we are here to demonize those who have mental health issues. There are real New Yorkers who suffer from significant mental health issues, and most of them, because of policies here, a long history of policies, most of them are more likely to be the victims of violence than the perpetrators of. But it goes to the point. Several years, the state of New York, under the previous governor, who wants to be the next mayor, and this governor, we have moved in a deinstitutionalized setting. We have pushed people out of getting services they need into the community to get the services there. But we know they're not getting the services there. We have turned our backs on the mental health system here in New York. We have let it atrophy, decay, dismantled, whatever term you want to use. And when we talk about the increases in crime and the increases in instances of crime, a lot of that, homelessness, a lot of that can be traced back to mental health and the lack of supports and the idea that even somebody who is suffering from schizophrenia, from significant mental health disorders, are on the street, not getting the service they need, where they will either be the victims of violence or they will perpetrate violence. They will more likely come into contact with a police officer than a mental health professional. And you can ask any police officer in the state. They are as much mental health counselors today or have to learn to identify mental health issues because they are far more likely to come into contact with someone suffering a mental health breakdown than a mental health professional. And that's just bad. That is, in my view, it's a credit to the police officers who are able to de-escalate those situations, but more often than not, that is going to result in a bad outcome or a less than desirable outcome because you're set up to fail in that situation. And you could see what happened over the weekend in Brooklyn. There was a heinous attack on 4 children by a family member who has since been revealed that he's been hospitalized for schizophrenia. Days later, there was a woman who was attacked with a broken bottle by a perpetrator with a long rap sheet who had previously, it's been reported, had 36 mental health hearings, but was back on the street instead of getting the help that he clearly needed. I don't know that the governor's proposal is some silver bullet. I'm going to say it's probably not. I once sponsored a bill that would kind of do the same thing she wanted to do, because I could see this years ago, that there was clearly a problem with people suffering from significant mental health, that they were not of Of course they can't make the determination that I need help. And we owe it to them and other people in their life around them to make sure they get the help they need. And we need to be realistic. We need to be realistic about the community we're talking about. If someone is suffering from significant schizophrenia, it is unlikely that they are going to be able to be of the mindset that they need the help they need, even though they do. So we can either let more people be victimized, and we're lucky that no one died in these scenarios. But every day, I know police officers, we used to have, I don't know if we still do, we used to fund crisis intervention training, which was training police, law enforcement, so they could identify maybe if somebody was having a mental health breakdown and de-escalate that situation or maybe treat it a little differently than they otherwise would have. But again, cops have to make split-second decisions. Someone's waving a meat cleaver or a machete. There's not a lot of time always to, have a Dr. Phil conversation. And so what happens? Someone gets hurt that shouldn't have. On top of the kids or the woman. I don't want to see someone who has schizophrenia get shot. I don't want to see someone with significant mental health disorders end up in jail instead of getting the services they need somewhere else, or living under a bridge when they should be somewhere else. But we have to get real about the challenges of mental health. And it's not just in the community, and that's great. Everyone with mental health can just live amongst us. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. That's just not always the case. I wish it were. There are people who can, and that's great. And we should make sure that there's a path for that. But for people with 36 mental health hearings to be roaming around, slicing a person's face with a glass bottle or the shard of a glass bottle is a failure of New York's mental health infrastructure and policy. And when we talk about crime and quality of life, you cannot divorce. And here we are, no budget, and one of the reasons is because we just can't be real about the need to improve the mental health system and to allow for people who need help to get it, to get that help they need. And I don't want to wait for 4 more kids to be attacked or worse, or a woman to be attacked or worse, or, because I can promise you this, someone who has mental health, who's living on the street, when they get maybe attacked or killed, a lot of times you won't even read about it. Because it's not, no one knows who that person is. It's just another statistic. And we don't even have it in the newspaper. There's not even a press conference to talk about it because no one, it's like it never happened. And that's just as much of a shame, in my view. You are doing these individuals no service by letting them out there to either be victimized or victimize. And so, disappointing, but I don't agree on a lot of what Governor Hochul does, and she knows that. I tell her when I see her. We agree on a football team generally. That's like the one thing we unify around. But on this, because of my history, chairing that committee, I do agree that changes need to be made here. And this should be a common sense thing that most New Yorkers, I think, would agree on. And yet, here we are, no budget, because my colleagues across the aisle can't get their act together and just acknowledge what is readily apparent today, yesterday, and I think has been readily apparent for many years now. So with that, I want to call up, again, my partner, a partner in government, someone who I think leads his conference and his part of the chamber with a great deal of dignity and class, and that is Assembly Republican leader Will Barkley.
Thank you very much, Leader Ward. I like that dignity and class. I don't get to hear that very often, so thanks for pointing that out. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to be brief because I want to hear from our speakers where the terrible tragedies happened in their districts. But yesterday we did a press conference on spending and taxes and affordability. And that issue is a big issue that we're trying to get out there and make sure the public knows what the three Dems in the room are doing or not doing in regarding that. And the Dems have made a complete mess of affordability in New York State. So here today, we're here to talk about public safety. And where do we stand on public safety? Here we are, another day, another attack, another lost week of inaction and dysfunction. And I ask any of you, anybody here in Albany, anybody in Albany, how many tragedies is it going to take before the Democrats stop doing these roadblocks and let us actually go forward with public policy to help public safety? Now, the leader mentioned we have a late budget. It's very important we have a late budget because of, the mask ban, the problems with discovery, and certainly this involuntary commitment issue. So we have a late budget, and that's not good for New Yorkers. But in reality, we also have a public safety crisis. And the fact that they refuse to act on that just goes to show. And these are the same, by the way, these are the same people who are willing to hold up the state budget. These are the same people that brought you bail reform. They brought you defund the police. Why in the world do we want to hold up the budget, get the budget done? We ought to get this done for public safety. In my mind, and Leader Orb mentioned, this is a common sense proposal. I think these tragedies that happened in New York, down in New York City certainly show that. So I'm happy here to lend my voice to this and continue to push forward to make sure that hopefully this issue gets taken care of in this budget. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Senator Chan.
Thank you. I think the members of the media know me by now. I'm usually up here criticizing and calling people out. So it's not often that I stand up here and I applaud our governor. I applaud our governor for trying to include this involuntary commitment as a part of our budget. And I'll touch on more on that in a little bit. So everybody knows I'm a cop of 27 years, and a good 13 of those years I spent running around the streets. If I went to 200 workdays a year, which is about right, and I answered 10 radio runs a night, that comes out to about somewhere around in the vicinity of 20 to 25,000 radio runs that I personally responded to as a cop, as a supervisor, as an undercover, as a narcotics cop. 25,000 radio runs, and can you imagine how many thousands of those radio runs that I've encountered where somebody has a mental health problem? Sometimes, as Leader Ort mentioned, sometimes I would have a couple of minutes to react, think of a plan, me and my partner or other units on scene. Sometimes I would have zero time to react. The second I get out of the car, I'm fighting. I'm on the ground. I'm on top of the car. So it's real, and it affects, every community and every member of our family, every friend we have in some way at some point. This past weekend on 84th Street, right in the middle of my community, now I still have a very intimate relationship with our police precincts over there that I've been running around with. I get a call at 10 o'clock in the morning, 10:30 in the morning, Steve, you better get over here, 84th Street. And I know people that live on that block, 5 families. I go over there, and what I see is a scene reminiscent of something that happened about 12 years ago, something that happened about 15 years ago. 12 years ago, a emotionally disturbed Asian male took a meat cleaver and killed his cousin's wife and her whole family. I don't know how many people. Her name was Chen Min Dong. I just committed that to my memory because I was the second in command of a small crime scene unit in Brooklyn at the time, and I actually worked that scene. Prior to that, there was a gentleman by the name of Eric. He is my friend Terry's nephew. He butchered his mother and father in Staten Island. I believe Senator Lanza remembers that job, and I was also at that scene. So in this past 1 week, we have seen headlines like a 15-year-old out in Long Island killing his grandmother and injuring his mother. We see another person stabbing her mother in Poughkeepsie. We see a unhinged man for no reason breaks a bottle and cuts a vibrant 25-year-old in the neck, and she's in critical condition. So we can agree that it's not normal. It's not normal for somebody to be so mad and just out of anger or out of something, breaks a bottle and just cuts the first person that he sees, or stabs his mother and father and butchers his whole family. So this past Saturday on 84th Street, we seen that again, and my office was there on scene, and we went to the hospital with the kids, with the children, and we saw the condition that they were in, and we've been in touch with their parents ever since. And it's very traumatizing. I can only imagine down the road what these kids are going to be thinking and feeling. So far, they have not spoken to anyone until this morning. My office was helping the family, acting as a liaison between the family and the DA's office and ACS in New York City. So, like Leader Ort says, you know, expanding the involuntary commitment, is that going to work? We don't know. We don't know. But something needs to be done, and we can't not do anything about it. So we need these people to be able to, you know, we need the ability to make them take their medication, to not, the word is not incarcerate, but to keep them at a place where they cannot hurt themselves, where they cannot hurt others. And that's, you know, as a cop responding to these emotionally disturbed people job, we call it an EDP job, the first thing we ascertain is this person about to hurt himself or others? So if the answer is yes, we have to remove them, but remove them to where? So that is to be determined. You know, formally we moved them to the Bellevue Hospital psych ward, and a lot of times and Kings County Hospital in Brooklyn has a pretty good one too. I forgot the name of that building. I believe it's called the H building. Is that right, Vito? The H building in Kings County Hospital. Over there, they can stay for a few days, and where they'll, you know, get cleaned up and they take their medication and they come out, they'll be okay for a while. So we need to figure that out. So I implore our Senate and our Assembly leaders to address the issue instead of just ignoring it. Let's do something about it. I want to thank my friend, Assemblyman Lester Chang, that day. He was there with me on Saturday. And I would like to introduce Assemblyman Lester Chang from Brooklyn, New York.
Thank you, Stevens. Thank you, Senator Stevens. And thank you, Leader Ort. Thank you, Leader Barkley, to hold this important press conference here. And my deepest gratitude to the NYPD 6-2 precinct and a 911 operator, because they received a 11-year-old girl in hiding in a closet, making that phone call. So you can imagine the 911 operator have to do. For this swift and courageous response to this horrific attack that occurred this past Sunday in Bensonhurst, in my neighborhood. The officer have to make a life and death decision that prevent further loss of life, and I extend my thanks to that NYPD officer. The tragedy also underscores the urgent need to continue addressing mental health in our communities. There is help for New Yorkers in this emotional distress, and for New York City, it's called NYC Well Help Hotline. That's 888 NYC Well. That's 1-888-692-9355, 7 days a week, 24/7. No one should suffer in mental health silence. No one should. The victims are, of course, they're Chinese, and they came from the Fujian province. That's mostly comprised of my community and Senator Chang's community. In particular, people came from China, immigrant from China. Mental health is not a very common way to ask, especially in generation of my age or older. It's a taboo. So, as a retired naval officer, 24 years, and an Afghan war veteran, I was diagnosed PTSD. So the VA helped me for 3 years be treated for mental health, as well as grief counseling. So I want to express this to the public, that there is no shame, especially my community, asking for mental health, because I received it, and it helped me. So, and I hope that my Fujianese Family Association, which is the American New York Chinese Association, which is one of the largest Fujianese association, President Ray Wong, is ready to help these families. Because once these kids, the victims, once they come out of hospital, they have lifelong mental health need. There is no question about that. There's no enough insurance to take care of them, especially for mental health counseling. It only goes so far. So the Family Association is ready to help them financially and other resources as well. So I want to make that, explain that to the public as well. And that Sunday, as I visited a hospital, me and Steve visited a hospital, and we both saw the two young victims itself. You know, we didn't speak to them, but we spoke to the family member, and they were also in shock, and they were confused on what's happening on that. My office, as well as Steve's office, we follow up with the family members to make sure that they're okay. Because about a year and a half ago, in my district in Sunset Park, there was a hammer attack with two family roommates, and the husband killed another female family. So the perpetrator family has a wife, wasn't there, was in Maryland, and a young son, 8-year-old, witnessed. I personally helped that family because the other side of the family is being taken care of by the community, but the other side wasn't. So my office personally took care of that, gave him separate housing and relocate the school. So mental health is still a big issue itself, and I have to thank Governor Hochul regarding about this mental health. But we need to pass this itself. We need to pass this bill because people who are mentally in distress may not have the right mind, right logic of making a right decision. We need to have tools for the law enforcement or the mental health to make a decision on the spot to take these people out. And we used to have the previous governor close down mental health hospital, and we need to have something to come back again because we lost so many beds for that, and there's so many people out in the streets are living in an inhumane position. So I hope this press conference let the people know we need this bill to pass, and I have to thank Leader Barkley, Leader Ort to push this. And our conference are ready, stand ready for this. Thank you all.
Well, thank you very much, Assemblyman, and thank you, Senator Chan, and of course, Leader Barkley. I will open it up to questions. If there's questions on this topic, the involuntary commitment or on the attacks or anything like that, we'll start there first. So if you could just identify, who you are, where you're from, where your question's directed, and then we will go to, once those are exhausted, Leader Barkley and I are happy to take, or at least I am, I don't want to speak for him, we're happy to take off-topic questions. Bob.
Thanks, Leader. So the advocates for mental health, a lot of them have said that they consider the governor's bill to be coercion, and they suggest that a better option would be to fund clubhouses and other things like that. I know there is some of that in the bill as well. Mm-hmm. What do you say to their concerns and as well, I should say that they're worried that people are going to be left in jails too long because there's no beds available, and that's why they're
sure
against it.
So first, I have a tremendous amount of respect for the groups and the advocates you're talking about. I know some of them personally. I worked with them. And I've heard these concerns for a long time, meaning that they're concerned about sort of going too far, right? There's always this balance. I think whenever we talk about the government, the power of the state, let's say, I think there's always a concern. I don't care whether you're talking about mental health or in our daily lives, you're always worried about that balance between respecting someone's right to self-determination and yet trying to protect people. I think it's important to note I think the bill really focused on people who have significant mental health issues. This isn't someone who might just have a small bout of depression. This is significant mental health issues, and in many cases where they are the most basic, things, food, clothing, shelter, they are not able to sort of make those decisions. So I think it's important that we're not talking about just willy-nilly everybody. This is a very select subgroup of people. Someone that has 36, let's say, mental health hearings, 36, that person probably, whether they know it or not, is asking for help. And if we don't get it to them, someone, either he or someone else or both, are going to get injured. And that's what I would tell those groups. And hopefully we could work with them to make sure. I think when it comes to funding, so there's no question under the former governor and now mayoral candidate Cuomo's leadership, whatever you might think of Andrew Cuomo, he was no friend to the mental health and developmental disability community. And if you don't want to believe me, go ask them. We dismantled beds. We took things offline. We closed institute. So there's no question we are going to have to probably, not probably, certainly look at bringing more beds online, right? Bringing up services. If you're going to do this, you have to have the space to do it. But I would tell you they're already in jails now. Like that's what's happening, right? That's what's happening now is they're in jail. If being on the street is better than being in somewhere, I don't know that I concur with that. I mean, I think you're choosing between maybe degrees of bad at that point, but we already have people with significant mental health in a prison, in a hospital ER, on the street. None of those places is where you want them. But the reality is you have people out there in the community that are not getting the help they need and are a danger to themselves and the community. And we have to be realistic about that. That's, again, somebody who has, maybe some depression or PTSD from their service in Afghanistan is not the person with 36 mental health hearings who has, really significant mental health issues and is a real danger to themselves or others. And I think that's what we're talking about. I think that's who the governor is trying to capture in this involuntary commitment. This has always been a sensitive issue. I remember when I brought it up, it was a very sensitive issue with that community. And I remember some of my Democratic colleagues saying that, well, you got to want to get the help, right? Because then if you don't, then your success is going to go down. And I think there's data that probably backs it up. And I think it was like they said, like, well, people that are involuntarily kept or involuntary, their success rate or whatever is like, 35%. And I said, well, 35% is still better than zero, right? So getting someone the help, if that saves one kid or that person's life, I think that's worth it. I think we're moving in the right direction. We probably have to do a lot of things. Might be only one tool and one thing, as Assemblyman Chang said, or Senator Chan. This is one thing we have to do in probably a litany of things.
Does the conference support the aspect in which nurses would be able to involuntarily commit as well? I know that was like a side companion bill to the governor's initiative.
I think our conference supports the governor's initiative to try and do something about people not getting the help they need. We'll see what the final, if there is a final one, right? Well, that's the challenge here is my colleagues want to, no doubt, either get rid of this or water it down. So we'll see what the final thing is. But I think she's, in fairness, while there's a lot there that I don't love, she's the first executive in my time here, over a decade, that's even tried to address this in this way, in to me, a forceful way. We went through decades of going the other direction. Push everybody out into the not-for-profit space. Don't give the not-for-profits any money, by the way. Push them out there, get rid of beds, take them offline, and then you know what? They're the cops' problem, or they're the hospital's problem, or they're no one's problem. And you see what that's getting us. It's getting us this. So that's not working. So needless to say, we have to move that pendulum back in the other direction.
Next question. On topic.
Bob, you took care of the whole thing. Great job. Buffalo News, everybody. All right. So now we'll go to off-topic questions, if there are any.
Vaughn, New York Post.
For both the leaders, Speaker Hastie introduced a bill that would clear the way for legislators to be paid if the governor has injected policy language into the budget and it's over the deadline like we are currently. What are your thoughts on that proposal? Is that something that you and your conferences could get behind?
Now, see, what I should do is I should say this is an assembly thing, so I'm going to turn over to Leader Barkley, let him handle this question, right, exclusively. And I'm sure he'll bat it out of the park. I'll just tell you my own, I don't think anyone loves coming here and not, being paid. I don't think anyone would like that. But the reality is, my view on this has always been, we have a job to do. Our job is to vote on legislation pass a budget. I mean, it's not, it's not real hard, right? The requirements are simple, I should say. I think this is more of an attempt by the speaker, probably at member management. I think, this is part of the negotiation, right? I don't know that I look at this as a serious policy proposal. I'll let him maybe, sort of describe that, but that's my take on this. I think most people expect us to get a budget done. They passed a pay raise several years ago. If you want to get that money, then let's get a budget done, right? It's clearly the legislature that is holding up the budget primarily on what I would term common sense proposals. And again, this is from a Democratic governor that I don't always agree with, but most of the, mass bans, discovery changes, involuntary commitment, and probably some other ones seem to me moving in the direction that our conferences have advocated for a long time. We would go even further, and I think we're going to need to, but at least we're moving in the right direction, or she's attempting to. The Senate Democrats and Assembly Democrats seem intent on not doing that and even holding up the budget, depriving school districts, municipalities, not-for-profits of funding to prove that point that they are committed to criminals and the rights of criminals and people incarcerated and the over victims. And so that not something I can support. I'll let the leader maybe speak to that as well because it's Assembly bill, as I said, but that's my view.
Thanks, Vaughn. I wonder what bizarre world we're living in where the speaker has to introduce legislation to try to force some sort of resolution to the budget. Aren't there 3 Dems in a room? Don't we have a statutory or constitutional responsibility to pass a budget by April 1st? And the fact that this dysfunction, they can't get it done, so the speaker has to all due respect to the speaker, has to introduce a piece of legislation that clearly, I don't know if you all know civics, it has to pass the Assembly, it has to pass the Senate, and then signed by the governor to become law. So it seems like sort of the whole thing seems sort of silly to me. And really, we're here, I said yesterday in the press conference, we are here, we'll do whatever it takes. If they want to keep us here day after day, we're willing to do it, but come on. Guys, these are issues, they're important issues that have to be addressed, but these aren't, we've had big issues in the past and been able to get budgets done on time. It's time to get this done. They ought to come together. There are 3 Dems in a room. They ought to be able to get agreement on this.
Next question, Mark Statewide News.
Hi, Leader Ort, this is for you. What do you think of the governor's proposal to change the way governor and lieutenant governor run in primaries?
Yeah. So I know Senator Griffo in our conference, he has a lot of policies about reform. This was one of them over the years. So I'm not, opposed to the notion of a ticket. I guess I would object to the governor's motivations, though. Right, the motivations for doing it isn't because this is a reform measure. It's because she's got a lieutenant governor who's no longer on the program with her, right? He's no longer, and she's had quite the run of lieutenant governor issues since she became the governor. So I think she just needs to pick better lieutenant governors. If I was her, I would, maybe get someone else on that vetting team. But I think so the motivation behind it is a little suspect. But I think the idea of having a unified, if it was me, I was running for governor, I'd want a unified Republican ticket, right? I mean, we do it at the federal level. So in and of itself, I don't have an objection to the concept, but sort of the timing of it. She's throwing this in there. We can't agree on anything, apparently. The Democrats can't agree on anything. And now she's adding this in there. It only can serve to complicate. This has nothing to do with the budget. If she wants to do this, where was it 2 months ago? Where was it a couple weeks ago? Do it after the budget. Or win your election and then just pick a better lieutenant governor next time, I guess. You know what I mean? So,
Let me just say one thing quick. I get irritated with this. Not so much the policy. I think that's fine. I think maybe we all could support that. But they keep trying to change the rules in the middle of the game to serve them politically. We saw it before when who was the lieutenant governor got indicted. And they got him off they passed legislation to get him off the ticket. They keep doing stuff to benefit themselves politically. I don't necessarily think they're motivated by good public policy.
So I was just, this happened when Mario Cuomo ran in a primary, Al Del Bello and Carl McCall ran in a primary, and Cuomo didn't get who he wanted. So there was a problem there. First-term lieutenant governors have not worked out since you carried. So I was just wondering if this could solve anything.
Again, I think we've answered the question. I think we would support the idea. Does it solve something? I mean, you have a crisis of a governor. The lieutenant governor is not the one who's effing everything up here. It's the governor. So that's not going to solve anything. This is just her. I don't know why you bring it up now. I really don't. So, not you, her. And so, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And the motivations behind it. But if we were sitting here having just a cup of coffee and talking about ways to make government better, is this something our conference couldn't support? I think so. I think so.
This, Leader Orta, and as well as Leader Barclay, what do you think of the governor, Senate majority, and the Assembly all having in their budget plans to close up to 5 correctional facilities? What's your concern that that's going to happen? And I guess for Leader Ort, your concern that it could happen in Western New York.
Sure.
I know Collins has come up, the county executive of Erie County, has said he's worried that could be on the chopping block.
Well, he better get on the phone then with his good friend, the governor. So I'm very concerned. I think I speak for everybody on that one. I'm very concerned. We were concerned last year. They closed 2 of 5, if I'm not mistaken. I'm concerned. This also goes to motivation. So there were no closures in her original budget. Then the Wildcat strike happened. And this was maybe the first of several punitive measures that the governor took against the corrections officers, from my vantage point. This came out in her 30-day amendments. It seemed an odd thing to miss in your original budget up to 5 prison closures, right? That isn't something like, oh, we forgot the prison closures. We got to get those in the amendments. This came out after the strike. This was clearly a message to the corrections officers. Now we have prisoners getting released early, right, to deal with the staffing shortage. We're going to close prisons. I mean, it just seems, if you look at this sort of, if you take a step back and not look at it 1 year at a time, there's clearly an effort to have less prisons, to have less people in prisons, and as a result, to have less corrections officers, right? That's the overall goal. Democrats, for years, have said they are uncomfortable with the amount of people in jail, and they are doing their damnedest to get people out of jail. Whether they committed crimes or not is immaterial. I would like to lower crime, and if crime is lower, then by definition, there will be less people in jail for committing crimes. They just want less people in jail. If the crime is happening, that's sort of an inconvenience, I guess. And so I'm very concerned about the prison closures. We never know where they are. We always ask for this. I know the leader and I have asked last year, where are they going to be? They never tell us until it's happening. And usually, I love it too, they always announce it around the holidays as a nice little Christmas gift or something to spread cheer. We're going to close a facility, and you have to then drive maybe 2 hours, hour and a half, if you want to keep your job. So I would ask maybe for some more clarity from the governor. If you're going to close prisons, just tell everyone where they're going to be. Just announce where they're going to be. I hope it's not in Western New York. I hope it's not anywhere. But I think if they're in the budget, if there's up to 5, then obviously she's closing some. I mean, that's the expectation I would have. I would just ask her for more transparency as to how they decide what they close and where it is.
I don't have a lot. I think Leader Orr covered very well. The only thing I would mention, I heard a statistic yesterday about, so county jails have to hold people who have been convicted of a crime. They're going to go to state prison, until they can get them into the system. There's something like 1,500 readies. They call them readies. They're ready to get it shipped in. And the state doesn't have anywhere to put them. They don't know what to do with them. So the county prisons, or county jails are holding those people. So the idea we're closing prisons seems sort of contrary to what's actually going on the ground out there.
Leader, next question, Sean Spectrum.
Specifically for you, but also Leader Barclay. Yesterday, you put out a statement having to do with substantial equivalency.
Yeah.
Just your thoughts on the policy, and does a policy like that belong in the budget?
Well, I mean, the more the merrier at this point, right? We got plenty of other policy in the budget. I know that policy is very important to the communities that it impacts. I know we have been talking about addressing this, fixing it, getting rid of it for a number of years. No action from the majority conferences. I know when I go to Rockland County, when I go to Brooklyn, when I go to those communities and speak to them, this is the signature issue for them. They view this as an existential threat to their community, to the continuation of the way they want to educate, their children. I think this fits into maybe the larger discussion about parents' parental rights and education, I think for even non-Jewish, populations. But I think that the budget is probably, unfortunately, I don't see this happening as a standalone bill through the two houses. That's my concern. They've shown an unwillingness to do it in past, and so, perhaps the governor, heck, we're already, a week late plus, but I think this issue is important to those communities, and I think that was sort of really, I think the timeliness of it is my concern is that the budget comes and goes. I don't know that there's a political will by the Democratic conferences to do this outside of the budget.
Any other questions off topic? Dan Clark, Times Union.
Hey, Dan.
With Hasty's bill, the incentive obviously for an on-time budget is so you get paid. Do you think the governor's salary should be withheld as well?
Oh, 100%, yeah. Withhold any elected official here. If the more that we're all in it together, right? If we're not getting paid, she's not getting paid, and then I never understood why that was not the case. I have my theory, but I never understood it. Never really made a whole lot of sense. If we're going to withhold ours, and I get it, right? I really do get that actually, but why she's part of that negotiation? You can't get a budget without the governor, so why should she continue to get paid? Plus, she gets a house. Right, we got to get it. You know what I mean? We got to get a hotel room or something like that. So,
Dan, I think there are a lot of bills out there that do precisely that. So I look forward to the majorities taking those bills up and getting those passed in the next few days.
Okay, thank you so much.
thanks, guys.